Originally from Vancouver, kjmunro moved to the Yukon Territory in 1991. She is active with Haiku Canada, the League of Canadian Poets, and the Federation of BC Writers. Be ready for short and sweet verse. kjmunro founded Solstice Haiku, a monthly haiku discussion group in Whitehorse that she continues to facilitate. Since January 2018, kjmunro has curated a weekly blog feature for the Haiku Foundation, now managed with guest editors. Her debut poetry collection is Contractions, Red Moon Press, 2019. Find her blog at kjmunro1560.wordpress.com. Here is the time now to hear the delightful words of kjmunro.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. And I'd like to start by thanking Char's Landing and the Federation of BC Writers for this opportunity, and in particular, Jackie Carmichael for her encouragement. And also Carl, I think, because you're doing things there behind the scenes, and all the other volunteers. I'm sure there are others.
See, there's no cross on it anymore.
Okay.
So, ask if they can hear you.
It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So anyways, and I also wanted to, before I begin, mention that I'm coming to you from Whitehorse, Yukon, and this is the traditional territory of the Kwanlundun First Nation and the Ton Kwichan Council. So I like to mention that before I start. So what I thought I would do this evening is give you sort of an overview of a bunch of different projects that I've worked on. And so I'm going to start by reading a couple of lyric poems. They're a little bit longer. They're not haiku in the sense they're still quite short, but anyway, they're not haiku. And then I'm going to, because I like the kind of show and tell aspect of Zoom, so I'm going to sort of show you a few of the publications that I've been involved with, and I'm going to read little bits from different things, including my debut collection. And then I'm going to end with a poem. I was just recently in a virtual retreat, and I wrote a poem about the solstice, and it's a haibun about the solstice. So I thought I would end with that. So I'm going to start with a couple of longer poems. The first one is called Amazon. Amazon. What if I were to tell you of a place where people eat their dead? Cannibals, they cremate them first and then mix the ashes in banana soup. Only family members drink the soup, and they don't use up all the ashes at once. In treasured clay pots, they save some for later. When all the ashes are gone, no one is allowed to speak the dead person's name again. What if I were to tell you, you can live there if you want? Next, Hungry in Tofino. 3-day camping long weekend with a celibate vegetarian. And all I can think of is barbecued steak. Almost all I can think of is barbecued steak. And that was in the Sustenance anthology a couple of years ago. Some of you might be familiar with Ursula Vera of Leaf Press. So these are 2 leaflets that I have with Leaf Press that I'm going to read. They're beautifully, beautifully handmade and folded. They're just delightful. And this is called Waiting. Floral curtains in the doctor's office frame the wintry scene. Red clusters of frozen berries by bare branches. I memorize a mountain ash, doctor running late. Waiting room, dead leaves surround the only plant. The nurse calls my name, I stand, hands open. So that's this one. So these are both haiku sequences. And this is called Summer Evening. Summer evening, through the open window, birdsong. Summer evening, the house with the birdcage, doors open. Summer evening, people gather looking skyward. Can you see it? Summer evening, green flash in the trees, the setting sun. Summer evening, empty birdcage, left near a tree in the fading light. This is from the Oak leaflet series, and the other one is the Sky leaflet series from a while back. So next, I would like to share with you a little bit about this book, Body of Evidence, a collection of killer coup. So it's a very long story of how this book came about. It has to do with the Haiku Canada Weekend, which is the annual conference of Haiku Canada. And it was being held in Whitehorse in 2016. And it has to do with the fact that that was in May, and May is National Crime Writing Month in Canada. And it all had to do with a library display case in the library here. Anyway, so my friend, crime fiction writer Jessica Simon, it was her idea. We ended up putting out a call for submissions for crime-themed haiku, which at the time I wasn't really sure was a thing. But a bunch of people sent stuff in, and we did the display. And then later, Claudia Cotu-Radmore suggested that her press would publish this as a book if the two of us worked on it. So we co-edited this anthology of crime haiku. And we launched the book in the spring of 2017. And sadly, Jessica passed away in that September, very suddenly. And so this has been a very difficult project for me. It's been a difficult book to promote, but now I'm really grateful that I had that time with her, working with her on this. And we had a lot of fun putting it together. We had a lot of fun coming up with the names of the different sections of the book, because everything's crime themed. So we have all the different weapons, and we had the scene of the crime, and we added nature of the crime to get some nature haiku in there and stuff like that. So we had a lot of fun with it. So I'm just going to read a few poems from here. And the tradition is to read haiku twice. So with these, I will read them twice. This one is from the section called Violence Against Women and Children. Her mother-in-law whispers, "It's a crime to wear that dress." That's by Terry Ann Carter. Her mother-in-law whispers, "It's a crime to wear that dress." And this one is from the Nature of the Crime section. This is by Carol McCrory, who is here in the audience this evening. Cold case, nothing in the nest but broken eggs. Cold case, nothing in the nest but broken eggs. And I will end with a poem by David McMurray. Evening sun, Police question unanswered enters the sea. Evening sun. Police question unanswered enters the sea. So I'm trying to read the chat as they go whipping past, but anyway, that's for later, I guess. So now I want to talk about this book. For some reason, I've lost myself here. Oh, there we go. Thank you. This is about a project. This is a little more recent, circumpolar duet. So the first circumpolar duet project was in 2017, and I organized it with a visual artist. This one I organized just myself. This is a collaboration between two groups in Whitehorse, a group of visual artists and a group of writers. So it's Yukon Writers Collective Inc. is the writing group, and Yukon Artists at Work are the visual artists. So it's an ekphrastic collaboration on a theme. So the first time we did it, the theme was the circumpolar north. And this time the theme is singular plurality, which is the theme that Canada chose as the guest of honor country for the 2020 Frankfurt Book Fair, which is happening this fall. We're not quite sure what's happening with that at this point. But anyway, it seemed like a good idea at the time to do this as the theme. So everybody in the group, 10 visual artists, 10 writers, create a piece to the theme. And then we do a swap, and every writer gets a piece of visual art, and every visual artist gets a piece of writing, and they create a second piece inspired by the piece that they have. So we end up with a 40-piece show, basically. And this time we also did a book of it. So thanks to Leslie Leong, who's one of the visual artists. She did the book design and she also published it. And Martin Berkman is a photographer. He photographed all the artworks. And so so he did the photos of the art for the book, which is really amazing. So we have some three-dimensional, or yeah, like multimedia pieces, and there's slippers and pottery, and paintings and drawings and photographs, and also 20 amazing pieces of writing by people like Joanna Lilly, who some of you may have heard of, and Jamila Hagan, and a bunch of other, and Elizabeth Vigan is here too. Anyway, a bunch of amazing art in this book. So it was super wonderful. Collaboration is always wonderful. But anyway, so it's really great. I'm just going to read I have a haiku in the foreword. I'm just going to read. Snowflake, a child lost in the crowd. Snowflake, a child lost in the crowd. So that was my take on singular plurality. So we're moving on to my debut poetry collection, Contractions, with Red Moon Press. This came out in 2019, and I spent last year touring it, and it's just been an amazing experience, and I'm super, super grateful for it. I've decided I'm going to read these poems just once as opposed to twice. And I also decided that I'm going to just flip through and read a selection. And I'm starting at the back and working to the front. And also, I'm reading poems that are set in spring or summer, trying to bring on the summer here a little bit, or poems that could be anytime. So yeah, so I'll just read. Starlight, seeing the past so clearly. A shiny button in her wallet in the freezer. Spring cleaning, paw prints of the dog no longer with us. Tax time, a gnome hunches over his desk in the garden. Tailgated all the way up the highway, spring snow. Lurching bus, the petals from her bouquet brush my face. Mowing the lawn at the cottage, wild oregano. Her room as she left it, the dream catcher stirs. Inside the paint box, birdseed. With her two hands, the artist frames blue summer sky. A raven caws. This hiker has no sandwich. Yukon hike. Water sloshes to the beat of the bear bell. Glass fish in the fishbowl. You stick to your story. Green sprouts, spring gossip. Yukon forest after months of snow, crocus. African drum CD skips a beat. Alaska highway. Oh. Mistaken for the owner of the Mercedes. Badly parked. Postcard from Niagara. The years fall away. The view from the high diving board. I saw it once. Two sides to every argument. Arriving at Departure Bay. Empty nest, the whisper of wings past my ear. Ashes cloud the waves. No one wants to be the first to leave the beach. So that's contractions. So I'm going to read one more. I hope is there time for one more? If I can find it. All right. So this is a haibun. So what that means is that it's a Japanese form. It's prose followed by a haiku. So the prose often would be about traveling. This is imaginary, but it would often be like an actual account of someone traveling on a journey. And then the haiku would be a haiku that was written at the place where you had arrived. So the idea is that the haiku it should tie in with the prose, but it's not a repetition. There's no repetition. So it's the link and the shift is often in the Japanese forms. That's what you find. For those of you who don't know, there's people in this audience who know a lot more about this than I do. But anyway, this is called On the Solstice. On June 21st, after a week or so of hunting morel mushrooms in the middle of nowhere, my son and my husband will travel north an hour to Dawson City to celebrate solstice. In the tradition of Dawsonites over years past, if the weather is fair, they will head up the Dome Road to the highest point, looking down on the town to enjoy the sunset and a beverage or two. Perhaps there will be a bonfire, someone strumming a guitar, a juggler, someone on a unicycle, a goat. One never knows. One time, a good friend, a geologist, was mistaken for a narc. The sun will eventually dip just below the horizon for a few hours before peeking out again. That in-between twilight, a time for calm in preparation for another manic day. 6 more months of masks and distance, darkest day. 6 more months of masks and distance, darkest day. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. We loved it here at Landing. So we're so glad you could make it and join us tonight.
Thank you very much.
And so, well, we'll just start it. Questions for kjmunro. Anyone want to know more specifically what a haibun is?
Stephen, I've got one for KJ, please. KJ, in reading your bio going from Vancouver to the Yukon, I'm curious as facets of that. Not maybe there's a second part to the question. I mean, I see Joanna. You may not know it, Joanna, but you're down and to the right to me this evening in the Brady Bunch screen. But there's so much talent there. And KJ, like, what took you up there? And were you always doing your writing down here? Is this there's sort of a whole sort of shotgun of questions there, whatever you choose to address.
Well, I can tell you that I've always written poetry, but I've only really started to take it more seriously in the last 10 years or so. And we moved to the Yukon for my husband's work. Yeah, because he is an exploration geologist, as you know. And we lived in Watson Lake for a little bit first. And then we moved to the Big Smoke.
Your writing's gorgeous. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Bill.
I have a question for you, KJ. This is Jackie Carmichael over here.
Yes.
Do you prefer writing short? Have you written long and just been like, I prefer short? Because I love the short, it's so striking. But I was just wondering how you feel about short versus long.
Thank you. I would say that I've always written very condensed forms of poetry with multiple meanings. And it was when I was starting to look to publish, I started researching journals. And people had often said that my poetry was haiku-like, but I don't think they knew what that really meant. And I certainly didn't know what it really meant. But I started investigating all these amazing haiku journals that do exist and learning more and more about it. And I'm still learning. Like, I feel like I'm just on that path and still learning so much all the time. But yeah, I refined my style to be haiku as I learned more about it. And so I still write lyric poetry as well, but I'm trying to get a little back more into it maybe just lately. But But haiku is fascinating, and it's very difficult. And in case you hadn't noticed, it isn't 7/5, prose broken into that syllable scheme. There's an awful lot more going on there. So yeah. So yeah, thank you. I'm not checking the chat though. Is somebody checking the chat?
I've been checking the chat. There you go.
I've got a question for KJ. It's Francis up here.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the I can hear the difficulty in the difficult. I'm struggling for the word. The word isn't difficult. I can hear the layers in the construction of the haiku. I can hear that there's something more going on. So my question is, I'm sorry. I'm just feeding off Lori's discombobulationness. Do you hear it in parts when it comes to you? Do you sense it? Do you hear it? Does it come in bits? Or
I'm going to say yes. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
Well, it kind of does, and I think that often when I write, I would consider half a haiku. There's a juxtaposition very often with two parts. So yeah, it's very easy to write it in bits, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard it described quite that way before, but I do think that is, yeah, very often. And often in what I find is, and what I tell people is to overwrite. I think since platform, I was, overwrite and then pare it down. And often in your overwriting, you might have 2 or 3 haiku in there with all the different details that you can't fit it all into one haiku, so you can create more than one. And the other thing, me with my unstable internet connection, is that what was I going to say? I've lost it now. More than just the internet connection is unstable, I guess you could conclude from that. Oh no, I remember, is that what I also tell people of all genres, of any kind of writing, learning about haiku will make you a stronger writer. It doesn't matter what you're writing, whether it's prose or another form of poetry or anything, because what you learn is how to cut. You learn how to pare everything down, and that's something that's hard for most writers to learn to do. And it's also very sensory based, so you learn to pay attention to what your senses are telling you, and be observant in that sense, which is also very, very good training for any writer, in my view. Anyways,
thank you. I think that makes that's just brilliant advice. Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. Thanks.
Oh.
Like talk now. Say something. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there any budding Robert Service writers out there?
Out there meaning in the Yukon?
Yes.
Oh, well, there's a lot of writers. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
All right, one more question. No?
When did you start to write?
Ha 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 ha.
When did I start to write?
Yes.
When I was, I'm going to say 12.
What inspired you to write this stuff?
In grade 6. I had great teachers, I think, through later elementary and all through high school. I took creative writing courses in high school and had a lot of encouragement, actually. And I read a lot too, which is the other thing, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Last chance. Got a bit of a question. Do you think we're just ready to just continue? We don't really need a break. I think we should just go on. Right? All
I'm
right.
saying yes.
Democracy rules.
Thank you very much.
Yay.